Hello, hello, hello. Can you hear me in YouTube land? Hello. Welcome to the Carmen Branje show. I am Carmen Branje. Thank you for tuning into YouTube on this Friday afternoon. Let's face it, you probably don't have much anything better to do, really. If you're like me, you've been trapped inside for going on 6 weeks now. So hopefully everyone out there is doing okay, right? I think there's some light at the end of the tunnel now. There's some things starting to get open now. Maybe some construction sites, some parks and whatnot. And I don't know. This weekend's gonna be nice. I think people are gonna go outside. Okay. So thank you for watching this episode. This is a great episode. This is the second live episode of the Carmen Branje show. So things are probably gonna mess up. I'm gonna fuck it up. We're gonna make mistakes, but hey, that's part of this kind of this DIY kind of YouTube stuff, right? Okay, so we have two awesome guests today, some senior product designers working their craft in the Toronto area. We have Han Bang. She's a senior product designer at Wattpad. So we're going to talk to her about all sorts of things. One of them is new designers. That seems to be sort of her special topic of recent. So we're going to talk about that. That's one thing for me. I sort of had a weird path into design, and whenever people ask me, "Oh, how do you get started in UX or product design?" I hesitate to tell them my experience because it's weird. So, anyways, we'll talk to Han about that. I also have an excellent buddy of mine, Rhodney Regoso, who is an excellent product designer that works at Loblaw Digital right now. So we're gonna talk about, we're gonna talk shop. We're gonna talk about. We worked on a team together this year, so we're going to talk about how our experience working together was. I think we both know that our team was really one of the better ones I've ever worked on. So we're going to talk about those team dynamics and what made that such a good team. And that's going to be the show. So what do you say? Let's start the show. How are we? So we have our first technical problem of the night. My video to our guests has seemed to stop. Has stopped. But we'll try and get it going. Can you guys still hear me? Yeah, okay, they're fine. As long as they can hear me, I think we'll be fine. We got two. And as long as their video is good, I think we'll be good. Okay, so welcome back to the show. You must be thinking to yourself after that amazing intro and listening to that awesome background music that was playing behind there. You must be thinking to yourself, Carmen, how did you afford the license for such amazing music to play in the background of your show? Well, I'll tell you, that music is actually my music. So that song is from my old band, but it's about 10 years ago now, called Nomadic Sound Division. That was back when I was cool. That was back before when I had kids. And actually, kind of sad story. The bass player so it was a three-piece. It was myself, my friend Rob, and this guy Brendan. And he actually, right around 20, 28, 29, he died of epilepsy, which was really sad. But he was a great bass player, and check out that. You can search if you'd want to check out my band, Nomadic Sound Division, but You probably don't want to hear that. It's dad rock and roll. But anyways, we have a bunch of things to get to today other than our guests. I have a few things, couple of videos I want to play, a couple of designers I want to talk about, a couple of events that happen. I want to talk about that. So the first thing I want to talk about is last week I'm part of a association called the UXPA. And we did last week, we did a stream that I thought was really, really good. Now, normally we put on live events, but our stream was, or our live events was pretty much canceled because of COVID. So we had to put the, live event to bed for a while, and we decided to do an online event. And so we had a couple of really cool speakers come out. They're called, let me see if I can remember Leandra, and what were their names? Let me see so you can look them up. Nicola Hamilton, and who is the other? Leandra Chinacci. And so they had this really cool talk. The talk is up on my YouTube channel about what they call the scaries, right? Which is when you're creating, doing some design, doing a new project, releasing it out to the world. How do you deal with those nagging thoughts, those little, those bad thoughts that tell you, oh no, don't do this. This isn't going to be very good. Other people are better at this than you. And, normally I'm not into that kind of stuff, but I thought it was a really, really good talk. And I think, we're going to try and put on a lot more of this live stuff. I think this kind of event on YouTube really, I thought was even a little more impactful than the stuff we normally do live. So have a look. The video's up there for all to see. So that was last week. What else? So I'm sure some of you out there use Figma on a regular basis, and I've been using it a lot lately. And Figma is in the cloud, right? And a lot of the cloud is sort of like a devil, right? In that it's really good. When you first get into the cloud, everything is so awesome, everything is fast and available to you, but you kind of sell your soul to the devil a little bit, and this kind of happened to Figma this week. So would have been about Thursday. If you were working on Figma, suddenly you weren't working on Figma anymore. So if we take a look at their Twitter thread, we are currently investigating an issue that's causing our service to be unstable. Yeah, no kidding. So my tool just disappeared totally. I couldn't do any design work at all. So that kind of sucked. But I thought it was funny. There's of course, designers are on their computer. They're probably Twitter users, so they kind of get on and start replying. So we have like this guy here. Yeah, fix it. That's pretty much what I was saying, because even it was weird. I have the desktop version, which I thought, oh, I'm safe, right? Because I get a little nervous using web stuff, but I thought I was safe, but nope. I rebooted my computer. Figma was gone for about 3 hours. Let's see. There's a couple of other pretty funny tweets that came out here. Let's go. This guy here. Yeah, so this is kind of funny because this is I work with a guy at work that I'm Italian, right? And he kind of makes fun of me. He says I use my hands a lot and do sound effects and things. So this is check out this. Figma is down. I can't present my prototype. So this will be me this afternoon trying to explain this new UX flow to the product team. This is kind of how I am with Figma.
Wait,
So
click here and
listen
go
to
back
this.
this way. Boom. Click and go back this way. Boom, here. Click and go that way. Boom, that way. Click here and go back this way. Boom.
Yeah.
Click.
So that was my lucky I wasn't presenting, because if you're using Figma to present a prototype to some stakeholder, that could be a problem if it suddenly stops. Well, let's check out one more tweet. There's a couple funny ones here. Bum, 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 bum. Hey Figma, you're down. Can you post updates? This wasn't very funny. It's just more like, help me. So there's lots of the Twitter firestorm around the Figma crash of 2020. Okay, cool. So that happened, but it was back up. I came back this morning and Figma was back, and I was back in action. So it wasn't that big of a deal. But kind of it made me a little scared for half a second, because I thought, oh shit, that's that could be really problematic. It kind of happened. I was actually working at the time when it, but imagine you're trying to present or you're trying to work on something. So yeah, I'm gonna have to rethink this whole Figma thing. Maybe not. It'll probably be fine. Okay, so I wanted to bring up one other video before we go to our first guest, Rhodney Regoso. And being in design for a couple of years, I've noticed that, and I think this is true with any field, is there's a lot of buzzwords and bullshit kind of starts seeping in to the field a little bit, and it's not actually a little bit. There's a fair bit of just flat out kind of nonsense and exaggeration and kind of snake oil. And so I'd like to talk for a minute, given that introduction, about something that's very pervasive in our field. It's called design thinking, right? So some of you may be familiar with it. Probably if you've worked in design before, you've certainly heard of design thinking before. But if you haven't, let me give you a little introduction to what design thinking is. So design thinking is this framework for basically organizing design work, right? That it became very, very popular in the early 2000s. And the thing is, it's reasonable enough, but I think it's pretty common sense. And what's happened is people have taken it and really just expanded it to way beyond anything that it was originally meant to provide, right? It's really just a common sense framework for thinking, for organizing your thoughts, but it's sort of been sold as like this be everything and anything for everybody, right? So there's this really awesome talk that I like to play for a lot of my students. It's called Design Thinking is Bullshit. And I want to play a little bit of it. Let's have a look here. And we'll have a look at what she says, and we'll make some comments, and maybe later we can talk with our guests and we'll see what they think about this. But her name's Natasha Jen, and she's a graphic designer. So let's have a look.
And that is my precise problem with design thinking in today's society, and particularly in design community right now, is a kind of complete lack of criticism on it. And I think that as somebody who like myself, really cares about what we put out in the world, I think that we gotta take a step back and really kind of look at what we mean by design thinking and what it does to our world and to ourselves. Okay, so if you Google design thinking and go to the image area, this is pretty much what you will see. So this was found in May 1st, 2017, last month. As you can see, that it's typically visualized and represented as 5 somehow hexagons. I don't know why hexagons. So typically 5 steps, right? And they go linearly. Okay, so now let's look at the steps. Okay, so the 5 steps are empathize, which we all know that we gotta, understand the users, their needs, so on and so forth, and be very sympathetic to the situation that they're in. And then,
so let's just go back to that really quick, just for people who haven't seen this before. Basically, there's 5 steps to this design thinking framework, right? It's a problem-solving framework where you empathize, define, ideate, prototype. Okay, so we'll just listen to 2 seconds more of her.
We gotta, understand the users, their needs, so on and so forth, and be very sympathetic to the situation that they're in. And then we really gotta define the parameter, right? And then with the parameter defined, we ideate, we come up with concepts, and then we have to prototype very quickly to realize these concepts and then test the prototypes with the users. Sounds all really reasonable, right? And I'm sure a lot of practice design or design thinking through this very linear particular methodology. But take a pause, okay? Think about what is really lacking here when you present something to, meaning design, to your colleagues, to people. The first thing that people would react to is what I call crit. So crit is completely missing from this process. What is the
Okay, so this video is pretty long. You can check it out. She's saying that critique is missing out of design thinking, or at least it's not explicitly put in there. I think maybe you could fit it under testing, maybe. I don't know. Maybe it could fit under there. But I would say what she is highlighting is that I think as a framework, it's too high level. It's hard. It's not very practical, right? And so there's lots of gaps. Now, there's another great article that I read that's kind of funny. I think he's kind of being a bit of a jerk, but it's called "Design Thinking is Kind of Like Syphilis. It's contagious and rots your brains." So he basically is saying kind of some similar things. Is that essentially it's trying to be the end all for everybody, right? It's trying to do everything for everyone. So let's go down here. One of the things he says is that really it's nothing new, and that let me see where he has it down here. So he compares it to when he was learning how to be a writer, right? And it's very similar to how kind of the frameworks that people give him as a writer, right? So, for example, empathize mode, consider your audience, right? It's kind of it's the same thing. You're going to design an app. You got to think about who you're designing it for. When you're writing something, you got to consider who you're going to write it for. Define mode. So, you're going to define the problem. Pick a clearly defined topic, neither too broad nor too narrow, right? So you're defining the scope. Ideate, or as he says, fucking think, right? I hate that word ideate. It's the worst. Why not just say think, right? That's why when I see stuff like this, my bullshit detector goes up. Prototype mode. So, for design, it's like wireframing or prototyping. He says, write your fucking thoughts down. Yeah, exactly. Just that it's not really rocket science. It's sort of how else would you do it? And then test mode. Give what you've written to someone you trust to read, and right, you got to test it with an audience. How do they react? Do they like it? Does it entertain them, et cetera, et cetera. So I would go one further and even say that really design thinking is just I've said this before, is design thinking is the scientific method with a funny hat on. It's basically the same framework, the same pattern of steps, right? And you're asking a question, right? What's the problem, right? Do some background research. What are you gonna study as a scientist? So you're gonna go out and find out about the thing, right? Just like you're gonna empathize. They use the word empathy. All right, okay, that's fine. Construct a hypothesis, test with an experiment, right? That seems a lot like design thinking. You're gonna come up with a solution, right? Which is sort of like a hypothesis. Test it. Does it work? Does it not work? And then, right, kind of iterate on that. That seems a lot to me like design thinking. So, yeah, I think design thinking is fine. It's not much more than, in my opinion, a common sense framework for solving problems, right? I think, I've always thought I was doing design thinking before I ever heard the term, right? Because really, how else would you do it if you're designing something for people? It's sort of the first thing that would come to mind. Maybe not. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. But maybe we should bring in our guest to talk about it. Let me see here. Let me just make sure everything's going fine here. Okay. We had a chat Looks like video's choppy a little bit. Okay. How's the video now, folks? Let me know in the chat window if the video gets too choppy. We could maybe stop the stream, and because I want this to be nice and smooth. Let me know if it's not working. Otherwise, you could probably just try pausing, because I think YouTube buffers pretty good. So we should be okay. But let me know in the chat if the stream isn't working too well. I'm trying to do double duties here, host and producer. All right, Rhodney, are you ready to go?
Yep, let's go.
All righty. Hello, Rhodney. You are now on the Carmen Branje show. How does it feel, man?
It's not too bad. I mean, like, feels like
Not
any
too
like
bad.
Zoom call meeting that we. Yeah, I mean, like it's kind of like when you're having like our Zoom call meetings. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I did one last night with a bunch of my friends because it was my birthday yesterday. So.
Oh, happy birthday, bro.
Yeah.
It was my
Thanks,
birthday
man.
on the day right before,
I know.
the 28th.
Yeah, I know.
Man, there's lots of
happy
April
birthday
birthdays.
to you too.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, thanks, bud. How old are you, man?
Damn, you guys don't want to even know, man.
There's no grace.
There is grace, but
okay, all right.
Let's just say I'm a year older than you are. So.
All right. But, well, I'm 29, so.
Yeah, exactly.
Sweet.
So
seriously, I got ID'd at the LCBO last year.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Nice.
So how has been designing from home been, man? How's Corona treating you? All that stuff.
To be honest, it's not too bad. I mean, like, I guess I have a routine. I try to keep a routine. Like, get ready in the morning, wake up early, go walk the dog, and then like really just sit in front of the computer the whole day. Like it's been okay for me. Like I used to kind of work from home too, before, and then like even I do a bunch of like freelance still. So like, yeah, like working from home is okay for me. But yeah, like I try to take some breaks, go for walks sometimes during my lunchtime or, yeah.
Honestly, I found meetings better on remote. You know?
Yeah, well, I think that's true, because we're not all on the same network anymore. You know what I mean? And like you don't have like all these people like walking and talking around you. Like you have your own like quiet space, and everyone is muted. I think, at least.
Yeah, it's not like I hate it when you're the only person remote and everyone else is in the room, and then you can't hear fuck all. So I don't know. Going back to the office, we gotta rethink things a little bit. I don't know.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, like it's been okay. Like I like the, I don't know, like the video chats and like still meeting up with people. Like it helps, I guess, break it up.
Yeah.
Without like having to like actually physically talk to people. Though I know like since the weather is getting better, people want to actually go out, right? So.
Yep. Okay, man. Let's get into the weeds a little bit. Let's talk about design. So
sure.
You and I, we designed not just you and me, with a couple of other teammates,
team.
Rosa and Jason. Right? It was an awesome four person team. So we designed the Shoppers Drug Mart app. So how's that going, man? I'm not on the team right now, but what's it doing in the App Store? Is it 5 stars? I'm assuming.
I would like to wish that it was 5 stars right now, but to be honest, like I think that it's like the way that we worked. I think it was really, really, really interesting. Like I've never worked with a team where it was kind of like a yin and yang type of environment where each of our skills within our team like really, really I guess had like a good contrast. And we were all good at what we did, and all of that stuff overlapped to do like for us to have like a good team. You know what I mean? And yeah, like right now, I think we're trying to make some improvements into the store. We're like looking at numbers and trying to upgrade. Looking at our reviews, I think uh, there's nothing really bad about like the design of stuff, but there's a lot of desire for more functionality, which is a good thing, you know. I mean, like I think people are actually like wanting to see more from what we have to offer.
Yeah.
But I think it's still there's still time. Like we have to get there still, right? But yeah, it's been an interesting ride, I think, and I think we're gonna get there. Like there's a lot of exciting new stuff coming up. I can't really talk about, but like
Whoa.
yeah, like yeah.
New
Well,
stuff.
I just I yeah, well, just new stuff coming up, right? I mean, especially with like this whole COVID thing, right? I
Yeah.
think um, there's a lot of desire for certain functionalities within the app, and like you can see it within our reviews that like what people are looking for, and like just the numbers. So it's just like okay, like we're hearing you, we're looking into it and like seeing where we can improve, right? At the end of the day, we just want to make great products and like really serve our users, right? But
Yep.
yeah,
So
I
let's
don't know.
talk
Like,
about
what do you
that.
think about our experience?
Well, yeah, let's talk about that yin and yang that you were talking about and get a little more specific. So I would say, to use a cliche, we'll keep it to you and I just for discussion purposes. But I think
Sure.
maybe to use a cliche, we had a left brain, right brain. Now I know that left brain, right brain shit is bullshit, but I mean the metaphor still works, right? So I would say you're a little bit coming from the artistic side, right? Like you have a background more in graphic design and that stuff. I kind of have a like computer science,
Excuse me.
academic background, and I think we came
Yep.
together and worked really well. Whereas I think so. Here's the thing: is I think a lot of people. I think generally we represent like two almost camps in product design. So I see a lot of people
Yep.
that sort of have backgrounds like me. I'd say that's about 10 to 20%. And then most people have like kind of your progression, I think, right? Sort of more out of the graphic design. And I think in the past, at least I've felt a little bit in the past, is some animosity between those two sides. But I think what we figured out and what we experienced is that really no, you want that together. You want like Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen together, right? And maybe a Dennis Rodman in there too, right? Because you don't
Yep.
want everybody to have the same skill set, right? You want to spread it out,
Yep.
you know?
Yeah. Like and I think that totally makes sense, and it really like showed um, from our experience, like working together. I think like just the fact that like when I'm working on certain things and you were working on certain things, it was like I would create like the creative stuff and like do like UI solutions where you on the other end like you would create the testing and like the research. I do have some of that background in me, so like I think there was enough of that background to like have that overlap between you and I, right? And you have enough like background on like the creative side to understand what would work and what wouldn't work. And like I think also like just even also having like RPM, like Greg, shout out
Yep.
to Greg, but like yeah, like
Greg
he
Samba.
also exactly he knows what he wants. He also has like a good feel for the industry, and he also kind of does have a graphic design background. So like uh, he knows what will work and what wouldn't work. So I think like that whole uh, like three-headed beast kind of just was like it was like a really good work ethic, and I think all of us just wanted to get to a good goal, you know, and like produce just great work. But yeah, like it was interesting. Like um, I think like jumping from like where we were, uh, like QHR, and then like moving into like LD where we kind of got thrown into the fire. I think we worked pretty efficiently, and like yeah, we designed a full app in like what 3 months, I think.
Yeah, most of
Um,
it
but
was mostly banged out, and then then the 9 months
yeah,
follow
I
up
mean,
work, talking with
yeah,
stakeholders like marketing and
yeah,
branding and
yep,
security and
yeah.
developers and all those fun. It's a big party, right?
Oh
Hey, so
yeah,
we
I
got a
mean, like
question in the chat. Was this with a company or freelance gig? No, this was with Loblaw Digital. So so Rodney and I were at a small. Actually, the whole team was at a smaller company, QHR, which is owned by Loblaw proper, and then our whole project was moved into Loblaw Digital. So we moved over, which it happened to. It's worked out so far for us, I think, right? And hopefully for Loblaw Digital too, it worked out.
yep.
So, okay, man. So I think what if you can stick around, we'll have you back. But I think we'll bring on our second
Cool.
guest, and maybe
Yep.
we'll bring you back for some. We'll wrap it up. We can have a 3-way chat. Sound good?
Cool.
Cool.
Yep.
All right, all right. Let me switch back here. I'm just gonna close my door here. It's been such a nice day that I had my door open. I can hear the birds outside. Okay, Han, are you ready? All right, we are ready. We are ready. Where am I ready? Okay, I'm ready now. Boom. Hello, 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 Han Bang. How are you?
I'm doing good. How are you, Carmen?
I'm pretty good. I'm getting a little. I'm kind of finished with the quarantine thing, right? The first 2 weeks, I was like, I don't. Well, actually, the first 2 weeks are probably a little, I'd say, challenging because it was the most uncertain. And then the next 2 weeks, you're like, okay, yeah, we're doing this, we're getting. But now it's just like it's grinding, and honestly, it's not too bad. I have a really good setup. It hasn't been bad. I just want to like hang out with some friends, you know.
Yeah, definitely. And just getting out without, having to run away from people is kind of, I feel like grocery shopping is kind of a trip out for me now.
Yeah, and just not feeling like you're scared of everybody. I don't like that, you know? Like I'm not the most huggy feely kind of guy, but to be like now suddenly everyone's like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, stand back." I don't know. It's not the best feeling. But
Yeah.
okay, let's tell us a little bit about yourself. I heard about you from your YouTube channel. I see you've got a ton of great videos up there talking about product design and sort of things tangential to product design and stuff in your life. And I see you were involved in Design X Remote Design Week last week. So tell us a little bit about yourself. What are you doing now for work? How'd you get involved in product design and all that cool stuff?
Well, I don't know. I feel like the start of it all is not where it actually started. I started designing websites and shooting the shit on the internet when I was back in the Asian Avenue days. So back in the back before, or I guess around MySpace, there was this website called Asian Avenue where you can design your own websites. I see Rhodney nodding his head. He was probably on there. And so it was one of those things where, yeah, you code your own web page and you made custom cursors and you made songs autoplay and annoy the shit out of people coming onto your page. But I think that's kind of like my first taste of coding and like the internet and like being able to design. Because again, back in those days, there was no UX, there was no product design tracked. And so I was like, do I do graphic design or, do I get a business degree? Ended up doing a business degree, but throughout high school and university, still doing like little like freelance gigs for people, building those like small business websites and just being like, yeah, you can build it. It's easy. After school, so I actually majored in, I have a BBA in marketing and sociocultural anthropology, which feels kind of like out of left field, but it actually set me up really nicely for the research that we do in design. So I started working at a consulting company. So worked on a portfolio management application, spent 3 years there, realized my heart isn't in fintech, wanted to pivot to something new, worked at Chorus for a bit, realized that, yeah, I kind of like entertainment, but I kind of want to go back to a company that's technology first. And so in sort of my search for the next big adventure, I landed myself at Wattpad. I'm currently a senior product designer there on the audience trust team. So essentially, we build tools to keep our users safe, things like mute and block, spam tools, and equipping our trust and safety teams with the things they need to do to get their jobs done.
Okay, awesome. Sounds good. So can we go back? You said you started in graphic design. Is that correct?
Yeah, exactly.
So help me understand that, because I think people sort of gloss over sometimes, but tell me what that inflection point, do you remember a specific moment, or like where did you make that switch? Because that is the number one question I get anytime I teach UX design and I do a seminar, guaranteed every time. I'm a graphic designer. How do I get into product design / UX design? So can you talk about like that specific moment? Was it a day, a week, a month? Was it like that? Was it more gradual? How did it work?
It felt like it's like, I don't know, that there was like a saying, it's like when I don't know, opportunity meets luck, blah, 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 all that stuff. So when I started at the consulting company, it was actually in a business analyst role. But as they were kind of redoing the platform to bring it up to date, because they were still on like DOS and green screens. So your banks are using green screens to manage money right now. They had said, we have this designer, and I'm like, oh, I do design. And so I was like, I can help out. Very quickly realizing that the stuff that I was designing before is not UX proper. And I very quickly learned, I think it was in that position, working with that senior designer, that graphic design does not equal one-to-one to UX design at all. And so I think learned by just being able to do the ropes. And I realized I was lucky in that sense, where I kind of got my foot in the door doing something else, but then happenstance to be able to start my career there and learn under someone. But yeah, I think I really doubt that would happen in today's case, because there is more of an abundance in I think formalized education, as formalized as bootcamp is, education into UX design. So that's kind of my inflection point, where it's like, oh yeah, I do graphic design, I can do UX design, realizing that it's not the same, and then learning through someone.
Right. So, well, I guess maybe some of that is probably still applicable in that, maybe generally, in that you should, for at least for me, the way I've approached things is, I don't necessarily have a plan, but I follow opportunities, right? And so maybe it's about like not having too specific a plan, I think sometimes, and be open. And so if you want to get into UX, let's say, quote unquote UX or quote unquote product design, is maybe like get into something related to it, right? Like an internship, whatever you can get. Start as graphic design. If you can start as a BA or start as a developer or start as something. It seems like UX or product design is something that you, at least maybe maybe not the last 5 years, but maybe before that, it's kind of something you transition from. But maybe both of us are a little out of date now with how it's done now. Because for example, 2 years or 3 years ago now, I taught at Wilfrid Laurier. They have like a UX design bachelor's, right? That that's like you said, like a proper education. And so I don't know, maybe things are even different even now, right?
Yeah, totally. And I mean, I think there's kind of like two things, kind of like two different types of UX folks I see emerging in the market. Those who are pivoting, a lot of people pivoting from different careers. And I think what attracts them to product design specifically is the fact that I think a lot of them, or at least the ones that I've spoken to, come from a very like business-driven business background, very like, whatever, left brain, right brain. And they see UX as a very nice combination of the two, where it's analytical, but then there's also that creativity part of it. I mean, depending on where you go and where you work, there's a little bit more creativity, or there's a little bit more business mind. So I think that's what is like kind of pulling people to the industry. But I do see the folks who are pivoting in from some other industry, or the folks that are kind of brand new coming into the market with like a formalized like university degree.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know what? I'm almost thinking, I don't know, because I'm a part of these formal education things now, but I kind of like that old way of where you get all these, like you kind of get a mix of stuff and then you go into design, because design is sort of, you sort of just have to have some experience, almost like some life experience, and just you got to be good at you got to be very wide, right? And just know a whole bunch of stuff. So I'm not sure if these first year students who are just focusing on design without that like broader experience of like being a graphic designer, being a BA, being a whatever, right, and then doing it, I don't know, it's going to be interesting to see the next 5 to 10 years how things play out,
Yeah, actually there was a really good talk earlier this week on Remote Design Week where I forget the speaker, but he had said, be curious, always be like looking to seek new knowledge and stuff. And I mean, like, yeah, titles to me, I'm like, whatever, but like senior designers, like I still seek to learn like new things, like different ways to communicate. I think even with remote design, you are forced to communicate differently now, right? You have to be much more explicit with things. There's no cues, like body cues to pick up on. Like you have to really like kind of explicit with your words, but then also making sure that you have the right technical words to use too. And so, yeah, I'm just finding remote design or remote work is forcing a lot of folks to work differently.
Yeah, for sure. So tell me about this remote design week. What you were involved in that? How did you get tied up into that?
Well, if for those who don't know, Design X is a global Slack community for designers, and so you can go and sign up. I'm not affiliated with them. I used to volunteer with Preet, but he puts on events and conferences. I believe he started a few different chapters. So we started in Toronto, has a few in Vancouver, Montreal, New York, some in Europe, and then now he's kind of just consolidating everyone. So it's a global community now in just a single Slack channel. And so I think his plans were to do an in-person conference, but due to obviously current events, that was not possible. So they quickly pivoted to a full week of remote conference. So they put that together, and some really great talks from folks from all around the world, many different agencies, product companies. And he had asked me to lead or moderate the panel on early stage designers with a few different folks. So we had Femke from Uber Eats. We had Anna Lee she's in New Zealand now. We had folks from LinkedIn and Intersect. And yeah, it was just a really good chat. And we were just trying to, be candid with a lot of folks who are like, oh, how do I get in? How do I get my first job? What should I do? How should I do my portfolio? Technical reviews, does whiteboarding matter, blah, blah, blah. So we're just trying to demystify that as much as we could.
Right. So what was, you were running a panel, or you were moderating a panel? What was the panel about?
So early stage designers. So like what can folks do to, land to stand out? So there's a lot of people coming out of boot camps now, it feels like more people than jobs. And so just how do you stand out when you have the rest of your 80-person class vying for some of the same jobs?
Yeah, cool. So how did you find the whole remote conference thing? Because, listen, I'll tell you again, because I don't know if you heard when I was talking to Rhodney, I said I kind of think remote meetings are a little more efficient. But I'll tell you, I once flew from Toronto to Omaha, Nebraska to give a presentation for 3 people, right? And I felt there was a lot of time wasted for that. And I just, in general, I've been to maybe 10 or 12 conferences, mostly academic, which are a different flavor, but like trade shows and stuff too. I find it's just a lot of time spent for like the actual nugget of information you get sometimes is like 2 minutes in this speech, and then you had to wait 20 minutes for it to start. And so how was the remote thing? Was it better, worse? Tell me.
Personally, I think it was one of the best conferences I've ever been to. I try to go to a few a year. And for me personally, like I hate sitting in the dark. And for these conferences, they go on all day, 9 to 5, 9 to 6. And you're sitting literally in a dark theater, listening to people talk, and it can suck sometimes. So I found my experience of being at home, sitting in my office, tuning in when I can, and being able to access the talks later if I missed it live was awesome. And then the live chat was really good. And as like a former wedding and event coordinator, I feel like designers are so equipped to design events because we know, right? And especially a remote one, we're like, hey, we design this stuff. So we know what the perfect experience is going to be. We know how to design this so that it's the most seamless thing. Was there mess ups? Yeah. I tell Preeta all the time, I was like messaging on the side, like, hey, dude, you're muted or whatever. For our first time conference, there was like, I don't know, over 2,000 folks from around the world tuned in. And yeah, it was pretty crazy. So it was just nice to see like that, like the design community get together.
Yeah, honestly, so I'm part of this UXPA, which is something similar. And I got to say, we put on a similar event. And I think we did this, was it 2 or 3 times before that I've been involved. I think it was, like you said, it was one of the better ones, man. There's more options for creativity. Like I was doing this kind of thing with the split screen and, so I don't know. I think when we come back out of this Corona thing, there's going to be a lot of rethinking going on, which I think is good. That's a silver lining. Okay, before we bring Rhodney back in, let's talk about your YouTube channel for a sec, because that's how I was made aware of your existence. And I saw you hit 1,000 subscribers, which might not seem to non-YouTube people, that might not seem a big deal, but I think that means you can monetize now, correct? Is that still the rule?
No, actually, so there's 2 caveats. It's 1,000 subscribers and I believe 4,000 hours of watch time.
Oh, so you have to have eyeballs through the whole video. I see. Tricky. But I don't know, even if I was thinking, so I don't have that many subscribers, I can't monetize. I'm not sure. I don't know. I don't know the strategy behind that, if it makes sense to, because before that rule came in, I had a couple videos that got into the like 5,000 or 10,000, and I think I got maybe 50 cents or something. So I think just forget it, keep it, and then just keep the videos ad free. I don't know. What do you think?
I don't know. It just depends on, I don't know. I'm literally like not even thinking about the money right now because there's like an estimator, and what it's saying right now, it's like it could be between $7 to $120 for the year. And I'm like, hey, I'm not, I'm doing this because I enjoy it. If I was for the money, then it would probably not be sustainable. But no, I've always wanted to start a channel, and I always thought like, well, what do I talk about, or what are people going to watch? And I'm like, well, you know what? Product design is something that is interesting. And I think coming from like an immigrant family, B, not like a traditional design background, and 3, working in the tech sector in Toronto kind of puts me at a pretty good advantage of like, putting some stuff out there. So I'm like, just why not? Just do it.
Absolutely. It's such a powerful tool, even if, you put up a video or something and it gets, let's say, a couple hundred views, which on YouTube, that's pretty low compared. Like my kids watch Ryan's toy review. He gets like 50 million views. So 100 or 200 views isn't that much. But if you were to go give a talk in a room and speak to 100 or 200 people, that would probably be a major event in your life, right? To be able to speak to just 200 people, with that, that's incredible. And then, but the high end on that is basically unlimited, right? So I love YouTube and the power that it brings, you know?
Yeah, exactly. And I think a lot of what we talk about too is kind of like evergreen content. And so it can kind of just live on. Obviously, tech, changes every few years. And so things sort of change. But for the most part, we're not talking about like a current event or something. So it can live on YouTube for sort of like the longer terms.
Yep. Cool. Okay. Should we bring Rhodney back in? He's been hanging back. I think let's bring him in. Let's bring him back. And let's see here. Woo, we got the 3. Sorry, you guys can't see me, but I promise you you look amazing on the YouTubes. So let's go back to if you guys remember earlier in the show, I played that video by Natasha Jen. So someone in the chat actually asked for the link. I'll post the link up in the comments. I think it's a great video, even if you don't necessarily agree with her. I think it's good just to stop and think for a second for this kind of stuff, right? And just think, okay, like when you're in the middle of it, it can kind of you kind of lose track of where you are. So what do you think about design thinking? Do you think it's become like what she said? It's just kind of buzzwordy type stuff. What do you guys think?
To be honest, I couldn't hear it. So
oh, okay. All right.
I didn't see the video. The video wasn't on there.
Oh shit. Okay. Well, basically what she was saying is that it's just become way more than what it was initially set out to be, right? It's a common sense framework for solving problems, right? That involve human beings. Okay. So I've heard, I see people on LinkedIn say, oh, design thinking is going to change your organization. I don't understand how that's possible, right? I think sometimes even these certificates in design thinking, I'm skeptical of them because I don't know if you heard my rant about how I think it's design thinking and the scientific method are very similar, I think, right? You could explain the scientific method to someone in 2 minutes, right? Same with design thinking. 2 minutes, it's got these 5 things, but to actually be a good scientist or to be a good designer takes decades. Right? And I think sometimes people are getting sold, they're being oversold on what design thinking is and what it can do. What do you guys think on that?
I feel like it's good to have frameworks. So don't get me wrong, I do enjoy frameworks and this sort of more like formalized way of articulating steps in how you do it so that it's just you can apply it to different things. But again, I think at the end of the day, it literally is a framework. People, work in companies that, do agile or like the double diamond or all these different processes. And I'm like, at the end of the day, it's literally just like a name for a set of steps. And so I think design thinking is going to change? Like maybe depending on what they're learning. I don't know what their certificate is from. If it's teaching you to, be more empathetic and to look from the lens of the user, then I'll be like, that's for the greater good. But if you're just saying it because you're like, oh, I learned this new way of thinking, it's not really a new way of thinking. It's just like a way of thinking that has like a name. What do you think?
Yeah. Well, to be honest, like I think it's really just for the business to sell to the business. Like it's for the design industry to sell something to the business. Like it is a good like way to have a framework, but like at the end of the day, it's like how do we use design to be at the forefront, right? Like I think it's only like now that design is kind of starting to sit into these big meetings and whatnot, but like at the end of the day, like how do you put design in front of everything now? Like how do we get designers into these big meetings and like sit into hey, like I don't think we had that seat before, and now it's like, okay, like here's some framework, here are these different things that we can tell you, like, oh, now we're going to present you like these are the different frameworks, or like this is this is the design thinking process. This is how we got to this solution, right? And like I think it's easier for the business to kind of digest at the end of the day. But yeah,
Yeah,
like for me, it's a good way. I don't know, like
I think it's a good
to
point. Maybe
just
it's just it's sort of because design, like the process of design, creativity, it's a little like what's the word? Like it's like a fog, right? And maybe this sort of it's like you said, it's maybe not for designers mostly, a little bit, but mostly it's to kind of help non-designers kind of understand what we do. I don't know,
what we
that's a
do
good point.
exactly.
Because it's not like every day when you go into work, you're like you have like the design thinking framework on your desk, and you're like, okay, how am I going to empathize? Or maybe you do, but it's not like maybe it's become so. Maybe as designers, it's just part of you, right? So you don't really need the framework anymore. It's just the first thing. Okay, so we're going to build this thing. Oh, where are we going to go talk to the users? When are we going to go do that? So yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's like it's so ingrained in us now, and maybe that's why I'm sort of poo-pooing it a little bit. Is because I'm like, what the hell do we even need that for? It's so obvious, you know?
I think to Rodney's point, it's to sell to the business, and I feel like it's I personally have not heard the words design thinking in a long time,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
Yeah,
you and I, like all three of us, work in companies where design is, we have a seat at the table and we're actually expected at the table, right? It's not like, let's start the meeting without design and carry on. It's no, where are the experienced designers? And so that's why I feel like we hear the word and it's almost like, like when you hear your dad saying like a like a slang or something, you're like, oh, don't say that.
Yeah.
So I feel like it's for the organizations that don't have a design presence where that this is like their first step into it, like, ooh, design thinking.
yeah. No, that
yeah.
I think that maybe that makes sense. That's a great insight that I've never really considered. Yeah, cool. So before we'll wrap up, we have a couple minutes. What do you think is the biggest problem in product design right now? Do you think it's kind of we're sort of hitting like I'd say maybe UX design started like around let's say 2000. So we're kind of 20 years in. So what do you think is the biggest problem we face now? Especially like we said, we started to get the seat at the table now. What are the things facing product designers now? What do you think, Rodney?
It's a good question.
Yeah.
Um, I think just maybe like I don't know from my end, it's kind of just alignment with everybody, um, getting everybody on board and like seeing it the way that you are, like seeing it the way that you want to like produce it, right? And like uh, yeah, it's like managing like expectations for other people. I think that's kind of like some of the hurdles that I've kind of experienced and like trying to get the business side on board is something that like is a bit difficult because everyone kind of wants their own say and like um, even if you thought about like the solution like throughout and you have reasons why you do it a certain way, there's still somebody above you who will go, we don't want it that way. And like I think that's kind of like some of the hurdles that I've been experiencing, at least for product design. But
Yeah.
if you do have a team that like is kind of like that wants to be that really works well together, like kind of like how our team was working, um, we always have people to back us up. You know what I mean? So like if we want to get certain things done, um, we try to make sure that we're together on this and try to present it to the business and like give valid reasons on why we can like produce certain things.
Yep.
But
Yep.
I don't know. What do you think, Con?
I think it's yeah. So for us at Wattpad, it's how do we measure value? I think that's something that we constantly try to iterate on because value is such it sounds ambiguous, right? Like how do you can make dollars, you can make revenue, that's business goals, but how do you measure value? And then how do you make sure that we always measure value in everything that we do against business values?
Do you mean value for the customer or providing value as a designer?
Value for the customer. So value for
yeah.
So it's like, okay, great, you've pushed out this feature, it's made us $100,000, but it's caused, you know, this many people upset, or like what is that balance, and how do you merge the two, or have the two data always live together to inform feature decisions and product decisions going forward? I think that's something that, yeah, again, we're working on, and why I try to push to any early stage designer, like, yes, you're going to be a product designer, but owning a product is different than, in my opinion, being a UX designer. When you own a product, you're owning the full thing. You're owning the user side, you're owning the business problem, you're owning the product alongside with others.
The waste produced, the whole thing, right?
Yeah, you're owning it. And so like having a business mindset going in and understanding that at the end of the day, you do have to solve a business problem. Like you're there because of a business, right? Your job is because of business, but you are the user advocate. So how do you make sure that you balance all those needs? And sometimes it's not a 50-50 or like a 33 split. Sometimes it's, you know, a little bit heavier weighted on the business side, or a little bit heavier weighted on the user or the product side. So yeah, I think that's kind of a thing that kind of weighs on my mind. It's like, how do we measure value, and how do we get folks to think for the equilibrium of business, product, and user?
Cool. Okay, last question. I'll let you folks go so you can enjoy your evening at home, probably. So I don't know if you know, so to practice as an engineer, professional engineer in Ontario, you need to be certified by a body, right? They have an iron ring. You guys know what an iron ring is? You've ever seen? Do you have any engineering friends?
Yep.
So Rhodney, you probably know this. In order to, because Rhodney is a barber on the side, and in order to cut hair in the province of Ontario, you need a license from a professional association. You can be fined, right, for cutting hair without a license. So my question to you is, do you think product designers should be licensed? Why or why not? Because so like an engineer, right? The reason they do it for an engineer is because an engineer could build up a shitty ass bridge. The bridge falls down, kills a bunch of people. But like you were saying, you could build a product that makes that. Did you know depression rates among teenage girls is like skyrocketed in the last like 10 years? More so, like you can see it's like more so than the boys, all this stuff. And I think basically it's because of social media. So product design has effects just like engineering, right? So what do you think?
Yeah.
I see us going there. I see us going there. I do see us going there because a lot that's been on my mind when it comes to the future of UX is ethics and ethics of designing evil, designing for good. And I think there's a lot of privilege, right? To be able to say like, what you're asking me to design is evil, and I am gonna, be a whistleblower. I think the ability to, survive without an income and all those things is a privilege, but how do we equip and how do we hold everyone accountable to not build things for evil, like not build voting systems that allow evil people into power, right? Like how do you govern that? And so I do see us moving there eventually, because it's designers literally, I don't know if you've seen talks by Mike Montero, but he literally shreds Jack's apart all the time. Jack and Mark, he shreds them apart because they literally give a platform for vile people to spew their shit. So it's things like that where I do see there being some sort of ethical policing around that. Yeah.
Rhodney, what say you? Do we need a license? I think, because I see a lot of shitty ass design out there, and I'm like, who the fuck designed this? maybe but I'm also a free, like, I like the free market too. I don't necessarily like people saying, oh, you can't do this, you can't do this, you can't do this. I don't know. Maybe we need a license. I don't know. What
But
do you
then,
think?
like, how do you govern that? You know what I mean? Like, how do you? I'm just trying to think of
Well,
like
just
ways that like.
spitballing. You'd have a body. Like, how does the engineer, like, how does it work with how does it work with cutting hair? I'm sure there's some. It's actually a private
Well, like,
institution, right?
yeah.
They
Well, I
somehow
mean,
they
for
get
like,
the. Go ahead.
no, no. I think for like, well, for like cutting hair, I think you only need one licensed barber inside like a professional like barber shop, and then the rest can still practice. So I'm thinking maybe like it might be something like that where you have
Like
a
an
license
apprenticeship.
from a like
Or
like a
or maybe
licensed
the
designer.
UX manager needs a
Um,
license and something.
I mean,
You know.
like right now you have people like these new photographers who just pick up like a camera and say that they're a photographer. Like they'll buy like a nice lens or something, and then they're saying that they're a photographer now. You know what I mean? Like it's hard to kind of govern, right? Like anyone could just pick up, like especially like Figma. If you're a student, it's free. Like anyone can just become a designer or like
Yeah.
say that they do UX. Did they do it properly? Maybe, maybe not. But it's also good to have like mentors, right? So like maybe like people who are above, right? Like and like I guess like design leads or anything like that would probably need that type of licensing, and then like make sure that the ethics like concept,
Yeah. Ethics and
then you know what I mean? Yeah,
accessibility.
Mhm.
yeah,
You know, all that.
accessibility and like
Especially now because
you,
it's going to
you're
be
not
mandated
doing
soon.
dark patterns.
Yeah,
You know what I
exactly.
mean? Like
Yeah. Yeah.
so.
Okay, well, I guess maybe we should start getting that in order. You know? Well,
All right.
I don't know. I know some people in academia. Maybe they can help us out. They can, because actually, the last event the UXPA put on, there was a professor from Laurier. I had her come out. Her name's Abby Goodrum, and she kind of said the same thing. She was like, you know, we're mature now. We should have something, right? Some standard, right? That so maybe it's not a license, maybe it's guidelines or who knows what, but I think it's mature. We're mature now. The time is here to act like professionals. You know.
Yeah. Well,
Cool.
especially in product design, right? Like you're thinking about the whole process, right? So
Yeah,
from
exactly.
beginning to end, you have to make sure that you know everything going forward, right? So
Like, you know,
yeah,
one thing, have you heard?
I don't know.
Apparently in Austin or in Texas, somewhere in the U.S., these scooters, they've introduced these scooters, but the problem is they're just everywhere,
Mhm.
and they look like people literally can't walk in the street, you know. And so that was some product designer came up with that idea, right? And some product manager, right? They're working together. Maybe they, you know, you need a license of some kind. I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah,
Cool, cool. So,
cool.
folks, thank you so much for coming on. I had a lot of fun. I hope you guys had some fun too.
Yep. Thank you for having us on.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Cool, cool.
Good.
So, yeah, stay safe. I hope we're let out soon, and maybe we can get together at some future event in person. That would be pretty nice.
Totally. Say hi to
Cool.
Liam for me, guys.
Sorry,
Yeah,
what?
for sure.
Say hi to
Say
Liam for
hi
me.
to Liam.
Oh yeah, Liam. You know Liam Thurston?
I do.
Okay, cool.
Nice.
Yeah, I will say hi. I will say hi.
Awesome.
Cool. Okay, thanks again, folks. Enjoy your evening.
Have a great weekend.
See
See
you
you.
guys.
Bye
You
bye.
too. Thanks. Later.
Later. All right. Thank you, everybody, for watching. We still have a few people on the stream. That's excellent. We had some people chatting. Go ahead and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. We're going to do a lot more videos like these in the future. Next week, I have an author, actually, coming on the show. Tom Greer. We're going to talk about his book called Articulating Design. And we're going to talk about what it means to convey design ideas and why it's important. So thank you everybody for watching, and hope you have a good night, and I will see you at the next show.